Okay, get a few more on here and we'll get rolling. There's been a lot going on about, the peace deal in the U.S. and Iran, and that didn't happen. That just failed. It's not really surprising. I think that's gonna affect us not as much in North America, but we will be getting some repercussions from it. Hello, Phil. we will be feeling the pinch, no doubt. We can only absorb so much. Being in the communist country of Canada, the odds are our government will probably step up exports to other countries while basically starving the citizens out. I would not be the least bit surprised if that's how they play it. Hello, Lynn. So we'll see how this goes, but as it is right now with U.S. and Iran, I see that Turkey was threatening to bomb Israel if they didn't back off on Lebanon, and now it looks like Lebanon and Israel are going to have a meeting in the U.S. at the White House. So you can't make this stuff up, right? Yeah, RIP Hungary. No kidding. Did Viktor Orban, they already have that election? I just seen something about that. I didn't know if that had already happened or what. Like, he was, I wonder who they replaced him with. Did they finally go communist again? Or, like, that's wild. Yeah. And who else? Emma? Let's see. Reason with the 7th century, no kidding. Good point, good point. So, but as it is right now, with the fuel and fertilizers, the shortages, it doesn't look good. I mean, I'm not right up on the U.S. On their fertilizer plants, but I think they do okay. I think as far as potash, I know that we export to the U.S. potash, as long as our communist dictator doesn't get his nose out of joint and try to pull some stupid trick, which wouldn't surprise me in the least. But Saskatchewan's pretty big on the potash. We've got two in New Brunswick here. They flooded one to shut it down, and the other one they just closed it off. I guess they figured nobody needs fertilizer or something. Like, I don't know. Then they replaced him with somebody bad. That figures, eh? I don't know what's going on with this world. It's like all the so-called leaders are in a downward spiral. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on. We know that they have their bunkers, but why do they have their bunkers? Nobody's come up with that reason yet. Is it because they're manufacturing an issue here? It kind of wouldn't surprise me. It kind of looks like it, eh? Well, anyways, I'm going to open up this other page over here, this other monitor. This is from the Packer. I think I've never seen this site before, but I think it's like a information source for grocers, I believe. And what they're saying on here is, are we on the verge of a global food crisis? CEO Francisco Martinreo, whose Helios AI platform aggregates billions of data points to provide a real-time view of the climate and economic risks affecting commodities around the globe, says we are. No, they're saying an El Nino's coming through too, and that's going to be a hotter and drier summer, so you can buckle up for that. In a world of erratic climates and geopolitical volatility, data is becoming as essential as soil to our food supply. That data, specifically new predictive modeling, suggests a catastrophe is looming. This is all not fear porn here. This is just the way things are going down, folks. Are we on the verge of a global food crisis? Yes, says Francisco Martinreo, whose Helios AI platform aggregates billions of data points to provide a real-time view of the climate and economic risks affecting commodities around the globe. We're at the beginning of the worst food crisis we've ever seen, with global food prices heading 12% to 18% higher by the end of the year, says Helios AI CEO and co-founder. The cause? Martinreo says 50% of globally traded urea transits through the now closed Strait of Hormuz. Qatar fertilizer company, Quafco, I guess it would be called, the world's largest urea production site, is currently offline, and spring planting is underway in the Northern Hemisphere without full access to the fertilizer. I know we have fertilizer plants in Saskatchewan and Alberta. No, I'm not talking about potash mines in Saskatchewan. I'm talking about maybe the co-op refinery might have one. I'm not sure. I worked on that, but I can't remember. Alberta does. Oh, I know that. Anyways, the exec detailed the crisis in an op-ed piece, The Iran War's Other Energy Shortage Food, published in the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday. Helios' AI platform aggregates billions of data points to provide a real-time view of the climate and economic risks affecting commodities around the globe, so it can equip customers with the market intelligence they need to get ahead of price movements and supply disruptions. So it's kind of a heads up to get ahead of this curve. We cover 90% of all the places in the world that are growing commodities for export. We cover 77 commodities across 90 countries, says Martinreo. We're always showing you what's the total percent of production, what's the total percentage of export. And that allows our folks to say, hey, we don't think you're going to get your tomatoes from Spain or Mexico or California, or your mangoes from Peru, or your blueberries from Chile. Here are the other places you really need to start looking at. So this is, I think, mainly for the grocers, predicting specialty crops in crisis. Aggregating these billions of data points across the world's key growing regions allows Helios to predict everything from bumps in the supply chain road to major disruptions like the ongoing Brazilian citrus crisis, which intensified in 2024 with record low production and an all-time high orange juice prices driven by citrus greening disease, also known as, I'll try this one, Huan Glong Bing, or HLB, that's easier. Severe droughts and heat waves. Months ahead, the data told Helios that heat and drought levels were high in Brazilian citrus groves, and a forecast for a crisis was likely. So they gave them months advance warning. So it seems to be fairly accurate. We predicted the Brazilian citrus crisis 8 months before Reuters and Expana and 12 months before the USDA, says Martinreo. When you had that level of heat and drought during the flowering period, it's just not going to happen, right? Those are not the right conditions for the citrus trees to develop flowers. So we basically told our customers, you're going to have to find an alternative supply. More recently, unexpected freezes impacted cherries in Michigan and Turkey simultaneously. It says cherries is one of the most interesting items in produce because it's not really fungible like raspberries, blackberries, and blueberries, which are somewhat from a consumer perspective. Cherries are not interchangeable with other fruit, Martinreo says. These are the types of insights we bring in. If you think you're going to have a really bad cherry harvest, here's what it means and what supply levers you can pull. At present, Helios is working with California peaches as it expects a pretty bad drought this summer, he says. Global supply chain disruption. Citrus, cherries, and peaches are 3 examples, but Martinreo says Helios is tracking agricultural commodities around the globe to help procurement teams leverage AI to get ahead of supply chain interruption. When I say we cover 90% of all the places in the world that are growing these commodities for export, it's almost at the farm level, he says. Every 24 hours, we're constantly updating actual temperatures, precipitation, speed, all these things, or all these different weather metrics rather, and we reforecast it out for the next 10 years. But the core forecast is really the next 2 years. So it gives us an unrivaled look at what any crop looks like globally overall. With weather increasingly wild, Martin Rayo says the Helios value proposition is resonating like never before. We work with one of the largest retailers in the UK, then buy a couple $2 billion worth of produce a year, or they do rather, says Martin Rayo. Our main contact there has been in the field for 30 years. We were talking recently, though before the war, he said. The last 2 months have been the hardest 2 months of my professional career because of climate. Every major retailer is sourcing globally, which means every retailer is impacted not just by the weather in their own backyard, but also around the world. It is such a different environment and ecosystem than it was even 2 or 3 years ago when we first started, says Martin Rayo. When he and Eden Tanilar or something like that, sorry about that, Helios co-founder and chief technology officer, launched in 2022, they had to convince potential customers there was a need for their AI platform. We don't have to do that anymore, he says. Now we just have to convince them that we're the best company out there. From fertilizer to food crisis, as to fertilizer shortages and soaring input costs impacting food supplies, Martin Rayo says he spoke with an Australian grain grower last week who has access to just 15% of the urea he needs for planting with no viable source to fill the gap. That conversation is being replicated from the Punjab to the Po Valley to the Cerrado, says Martin Rayo. Fertilizer not applied in April cannot be retroactively applied in July. For the Australian wheat grower, if he only has 15% of the fertilizer he needs, it means lower production and lower yields in the future, he says. As the global supply chain awaits the Strait of Hormuz reopening, a recovery won't be instantaneous. The strait will reopen, but the food system clock doesn't reset when it does, he says. The fuse was lit in February. The harvest damage is already locked in. As a result, Helios predicts global food prices rising by as much as 18% by the end of 2026. Unfortunately, that's what we expect, he says. We work with procurement managers that are sourcing agricultural commodities globally, and there were these dual shocks that happened. Your strait closes, and the Gulf isn't necessarily important in terms of a lot of agricultural commodities, but it's so crucial in terms of fertilizer. The combined impact of the Strait of Hormuz closure and Qafco shutting down had significant repercussions on fertilizer supplies. Who estimates Qafco makes up 14% of the total urea production globally. And the hard part about growing conditions right now is, when are we going to have a ceasefire? When are we going to have oil transport, etc.? Even if you had a ceasefire tomorrow, you still have to determine. You have to get insurance rates to the level where it makes sense to transport goods. You have to get captains who are comfortable transporting. And then the first thing you're going to transport is going to be oil. You're going to export the thing that gives you the highest profit margin. Australia produces a high protein type of wheat. The lack of fertilizer now will result in lower harvests for the Australian wheat grower, which means grain stocks go down, he says. Then the market looks for the product elsewhere, like the US, another supplier of high protein wheat. Then you have a price issue, but eventually it becomes an availability issue. And you start to look at export restrictions. And that's when it gets really difficult, because when we look at the futures markets, what they're pricing right now is a price shock, but they're not pricing availability or an export restriction shock. And that's a huge difference. So it says the U.S. is in a somewhat different situation than Australia. So, but with the interconnectedness of the global food supply means everyone must brace for impact. We're lucky in the United States, he says. We're geographically blessed. I think we make domestically 75% of the nitrogen fertilizer we need to use, but we're still impacted by global prices. So we're not going to have an availability shock, but a price shock. Farming is probably the most difficult business in the world. If everything is perfect, you make a few points. If anything goes wrong, you lose money. So urea prices last year were $400 per metric ton, and now they're $600. It's a huge input differential, and that's going to impact the amount of fertilizer you're putting in. So it says row crops will more immediately feel the impact of soaring fertilizer costs. Specialty crops are part of the same global food supply ecosystem. Rising fuel prices will contribute to the cost of produce, whether it's coming from California, Mexico, or overseas. Mark your calendars for additional insights on demand and forecast. So you're going to use the UI, or AI rather, sorry. So that site there, I believe, is more for the buyers, grocers, suppliers, and all that. But it's kind of a heads up. See how it goes, but like I say, it's the thing is, right now we're living off food from last year. So that's why I said 2027. Probably going to be worse, because if 2026 is a bad year, you're not going to have the food stocks for 2027. Now, there's other things that are affected too, and you probably heard about the plastics, right? People probably think, well, plastics, yeah, it's not good, but there's a lot of stuff that's already manufactured and sitting around in warehouses. Yeah, how many jars of food or consumables do you buy that have plastic screw-on lids, or in plastic bottles, or plastic wrappers that Trudeau wanted to get rid of, Carney wants to get rid of, so the food spoils faster? It's almost like a plan, isn't it? But the only plan they've got. It says, anyways, that site there is a good heads up, and the El Nino coming through, it sure hits the Pacific, but it also hits the Atlantic too. There's just so much going on, right? The magnetic pole is, if you're following that, is moving faster than it has in our history, I believe. And whether it flips or if it just, who knows what it's going to do, it messes a lot of animals up, bird migrations and all that stuff. Everything's a chain reaction, right? So when something screws up, there seems to just be something else screw up right behind it, right? So let's see how it goes. The only reason I'm putting this up here is because it might be a good idea to stock up on a few things. Maybe if you're into home cooking or whatever, stock up some flour, but you got to preserve it properly so it doesn't get full of weevils, right? There's a few techniques, you can find it online. You can actually vacuum pack flour if you look into it in a sandwich bag is how it's done, but there's lots of information online for food storage, safe food storage. Let's see, hot and hotter. This is fairly long article. I'll see if I come back to that. We got Ireland is exploding. I seen last week, I think it was, or week or two, maybe 2 weeks now, where I was watching a video of a couple of guys talking about world peace, or just in general, the world of the mess that it's in, right? They said they didn't know which country was going to blow up first, whether it was UK, France, Ireland, or Canada. Well, we got our answer. It was Ireland. So they're now the Garda over there. They decided that just like they did in Canada, they were all on board, and they smiles, with the guys. Keep it up. Don't worry about it, you folks. All you guys and gals. And yeah, now they come in to crush it. So remember, they're really not on your side, right? We got try to get something. I'm not going to get a strike on here. This is one here where they cleared the refinery protest. They used force to reopen. Yeah, they used force. The authorities did to reopen the country's only refinery. The only refinery. Do you know who owns that? It's Irving Oil from New Brunswick. I was surprised when I heard that. After days of disruption over petrol prices left fuel pumps dry and threatened emergency services operations. Yeah, I don't know if that would be a good move, blocking the refinery. Kind of like to get the fuel out there, especially when you're protesting the high fuel prices and the lack of fuel. Police in Ireland on Saturday used pepper spray and made arrests in a bid to clear protesters blockading the country's only oil refinery. Authorities moved in to disperse the protesters to restore supplies after 5 days of nationwide demonstrations over soaring fuel prices. Well, that's not going to stop it. This protest is going to keep moving around and growing, it looks like. Law enforcers, supported by armed forces personnel, moved in to reopen the Whitegate refinery in County Cork and escort fuel trucks on Saturday. The Whitegate refinery, I was told Irving. Now, I'm not, assumed that was good information, but maybe that's just the location of it. I don't know. National broadcaster RTE posted a video showing several officers dragging a protester from a tractor. Oh, they must have been watching those convoy videos from Canada and getting their tips on how to beat the protesters up and drag them around. I heard they even brought the horses out. Probably looking for a little old lady to trample, and they couldn't find one. Not one sitting in a walker, anyways. After Ireland's defence forces joined the police in clearing the protests, Irish Police Chief Justin Kelly said on Saturday that the fuel protesters' actions were endangering the state. No, I think the politicians got that job. Kelly told reporters the blockading of critical national infrastructure such as fuel depots and refineries had resulted in fuel shortages that are directly impacting on emergency services such as hospitals, ambulance service, and the fire service. In the coming hours and days, we will have further such operations, he said. Protests began on Tuesday because the high gas and diesel prices due to the Middle East war. Mostly truckers, farmers, and transport operators partly blockaded Ireland's only oil refinery and restricted access to at least 2 other fuel depots in Galway and Foynes, County Limerick. This choked the fuel distribution and shortages, threatening emergency services and freight movement. Can't continue to do business with the cost of fuel, cost of wages, and everything, protester Paddy Murray told RTE, adding that the government needs to step in to help. Protests have also disrupted bus services nationwide and tram services in Dublin. The Prime Minister warned that the protesters could force the country to turn away fuel shipments amid a global shortage. I don't know why that would have to turn the fuel shipments away. I guess if they block the refinery, maybe, but that's, I don't know. Could be all BS. It's a known fact. I can safely say it's a known fact that politicians lie. Say I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Jim O'Callahan said it was unacceptable that protests have continued even as fuel conditions have worsened. We all acknowledge the impact of higher fuel prices and seek to minimize the impact. No groups are entitled in our republic to hold our people to ransom in such a manner, he said. That's the government's job, to hold the people in ransom. How dare they? Say that the government's earlier measures, including tax cuts and rebates, failed to offset the rising fuel prices linked to the conflict in the Middle East. Well, at least they did do some tax cuts, not unlike Canada. See, our so-called government in Canada, they won't cut the fuel taxes back because the higher the price, the more tax they get. So the more tax they get, the more they blow it on things like high-speed rail. That will never be used only by a handful of people. Now the estimates are up to $200 billion for that high-speed rail, which is no surprise. Look at San Francisco, LA. You get the gist of what the cost is, and they haven't even got it done. And that's what's going to happen here, another boondoggle. Instead of getting a few pipelines in, get the oil flowing, they don't want that. So anyways, that is the government that we are stuck with. And it looks like they've managed to steal the majority. So this one here, see, we got AT Plastics in Alberta. It's a big plastic company, but the thing is, we don't manufacture in Canada. I don't think there's very many of those pellets. If you're familiar with the plastic industry, it's all little round pellets, are all color coded: blue, white, red, green, yellow, whatever, and they're all different for making different things. And we ship that, so that'll be shipped over to China. But what's the cost of shipping it over to Asia, having it, put through the manufacturing process, and then the final product shipped back? Time and money. So plastics, we know, is a big thing. The world runs on oil and plastic, as much as the liberals hate to admit it, but it does. They can't even get the rail system correct in Toronto. I only took the train once. Twice, sorry. I went from Calgary to Vancouver and back one time. I didn't like it. That was CN via. Treated like a third-class citizen. Then I had to take it from Calgary to New Brunswick, but they couldn't even get me close because they tore the rail tracks up here, turned them into walking paths, and the closest depot, which is now closed, was about a couple hours away. Then I had to get from there back, take a bus. I've never been treated so bad in my life as by CN. I swore never again. The only reason I did it because there was an airline strike. I'd finished a 30-day shutdown south of Calgary, and I was burnt out, and I just wanted to get out of there and get back to my own place. And I should have stayed. Unreal. Should have stayed right in Alberta. So Wow, there's been a lot going on here. I see in the chat, just checking it out. Bill Lefty told me ICE shot protester in the face. She had a right to be there. Okay. Who knows? Hey, no, Fred, are you serious? I'm not sure what you mean about that. Bill, high-speed graft. Yeah, no kidding. CN Rail here is built on swampland. It was just rude. The stewards. I don't even want to think back about it. I swore never again. Should have tore up all the tracks. It pretty much did, I think, anyways, a few run through. The worst supply shock in history, the oil market is spilling over to critical supply chains, threatening shortages of medical supplies, right? A lot of plastics and medical supplies, fertilizers, semiconductors, consumer goods, everyday consumer goods, textiles, footwear, cosmetics. Yeah. Says the naphtha, ammonia, urea, and helium supply that the Middle East would typically export via the most critical energy choke point is now trapped in the Persian Gulf. And I see that President Trump there is going to put a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, and I think that's a great idea because Iran was allowing passage of their freighters to get out and send their goods off to China and Middle East, wherever they were sending it to, all the communist countries. So Trump said, no, we can't go through. You're not going through either. So why let them go through? And shut them down. You want to play games? I think they'll break first. But most immediate disruption is in Asia. And Asia is a major like I was saying, exporter of all those goods, the plastics. It's all done in China, folks. So it's much like during COVID, the shock unfolds sequentially rather than simultaneously, a rolling supply disruption moving westward. J.P. Morgan said in a note last week. Asia's petrochemicals industry is already feeling the crunch. Shortage of naphtha and other petrochemicals feedstocks due to the Iran war have already forced petrochemicals firms to curb output. So, anyways, you know, as it plays out, as it gets worse, then people will realize how much we rely on oil and petrochemicals. All these naysayers about pipelines and oil, and you know, there's going to be a lot of things they can't get, and then listen to them whine and cry. So, now in the 6th week of the war, Strait of Hormuz is still de facto. I'm not sure. Let's see. Date on this article. This is April 7th, yeah. Updated, yeah, April 7th. The interruption of crop nutrient supplies from the Gulf. It's just as the planting season's here. It's not good. The chip makers scrambling for supply. They need the helium to make their computer chips. So, and then the computer chips need plastic. They go into plastic devices. It's a chain reaction. IMF last week says the war is also reshaping supply chains for non-energy and critical inputs. Mother of all disruptions. Medicine, technology, food production, consumer goods. And the bottom line here is exposing the world's dependence on petroleum derivatives for a normal everyday life. I try to tell people that. Like I said, I worked in the industry for years, over 2 decades on it for sure. And I mean, it was expanding. We were doing lots of expansions on plants in Alberta, upgrades in Saskatchewan. They said a co-op refinery and trying to think the other one in Lloydminster now. It's right on the border, Alberta and Saskatchewan. In the company, because they run the gas. They got a lot of gas stations in Alberta. No, ain't good. We got let's see. See, this is going to go off topic here now, off the oil and gas and all that stuff. I'm going to show you a couple things on X. And this is there's some good points here. So, this is the Bucky Will posted this. Nobody's accidentally friends with so many pedo without being one themselves. This is Trudeau. There's with Barack Obama getting ready to slip the tongue to each other. There's Charlie, King Charlie. And there's Bono in there with Justin. And this guy here, I should know, they're doing selfies with each other. That used to be the symbol on the Trudeau Foundation, and they scrubbed it when it got out. People picked up on it. Here's Trudeau, just, yeah. I don't know what's going through that perverted head, but I don't want to know. Peter Daglish, that's who this was here, I think. No, maybe not. Peter Daglish. And then Trudeau's best friend. Jailed after international bust. I can't remember his name. They were in university together. And I'm not quite sure who that is. That's Prince Andrew. Yeah, he hangs around. So, you are the company you keep, is the old saying, right? Now, Trudeau's half-brother here, Kyle Kemper, he says, why does this look so demonic? I hate to do this to you folks, but I'm going to do it. And here we go. I would just love to see her standing beside Melania. Boy, what a contradiction in images that would be. This is Juno News.
I have been told of university students already being required to read my husband's now quite famous Davos speech. Of intergenerational dinner table conversations being sparked by its contents, of new possibilities opening up in its wake, of Canada being the nation that is helping to define and shape a new world order. I have been...
And they all cheer that on. Yay! A new world order. Yay! That's going to be so much better, especially when Carney is our Prime Minister is so involved in it. That's going to be just wonderful for us, isn't it? It's just going to be paradise. For them, maybe. And, well, like I say, the Irish, they put up with it. They're saying, enough is enough, lad. We've had it. I'll gather her down to the pub after. can't quite understand what they're saying, but uh, they're not happy. That's just a collage of all the different protests, I believe, is what they did there. So, good on the Irish. And this is just going to carry on, folks, to other countries. And I think it could be a rough summer here, because it seems every day we get more bad news. So, with no positive change in the near future, maybe 3 years. So, a lot of people are not happy, and they're not going to put up with it, and we'll see. I can't say any more than that. I don't know anybody that's going to do anything, right? So this one here, you see, they've had all the speaking of Trudeau, never forget the Shermans, right? And how that story just disappeared. This is from the Buck You Will, also. The fact this story just disappeared is insane. The Shermans were set to testify against Justin Trudeau and were brutally taken out 2 weeks before the trial. Gee, I wonder what could have happened, don't you? And remember when they found them, they were posed in a, they were in a some type of a pose. They never revealed what that was. And that was covered up pretty much immediately. And he owned the drug company. I forget the name of which one it is now. Faye might know. It's in Ontario. Anyways, I wonder. Now, you see, this thing here, this disgusting excuse for our chief military commander. Total disrespect to Canadians, this thing. A Trudeau appointee, of course. So, and here it is. I haven't even heard it yet, so it's 1 minute long. See what it's got to say. Poor excuse, anyways.
Well, it depends. It would be grown over a period of time. We would probably test it, test the model over the first 3. But if we could grow, like we're looking, 300,000. But that's a reserve that would have basic skills that we could rapidly move into primary reserve. Focus or even regular force when ready. So that's the whole idea.
Would they be civilians just with some basic military training, that sort of thing?
Sort of thing.
Or veterans as well?
Of course, public service employees, like people who have some of the basics understanding of defense. People with specific skills that can also be leveraged. People we don't need to have on a full-time basis, but could come in and reinforce in times of need.
So you know what that was all about, eh? That's the Top General Jenny Kerrigan just admitted on Sky News they're building a woke army of public service workers. Canada may not see full-scale civil war, but they're gearing up to crush anti-government civil unrest. Buckle up. It's about to get a hell of a lot worse. They're already planning. If there's anybody who speaks out against our grand ruler, we'll get those civil servants to come out and take you out. They'll take care of you. They get their fat butts off the chairs from out behind the computer desk. Ooh, they scare me so much, those civil servants. Gonna lose sleep over that.
Well,
Yeah, Barry and Honey Sherman. I forget the name of that company now. It's still around. Now we got Fox News here. I haven't heard this one either, but I'll bring it up. And we'll see what's going on. What's going on?
For these sake, let's compare ourselves to our neighbor to our north, Canada. In 2015, they got Justin Trudeau's version of progressive governance, and we got Trump's populism. And even with the Biden interregnum, America has surged past them. Start with income. Americans are dramatically wealthier than Canadians, and the gap, that's only widening. Even Canada's own press has to admit that Canada, on average, is poorer than, wait for it, Alabama. Well, they're not tied with Alabama, they're behind Alabama. Same population as Alberta, but lower unemployment, stronger industry, and more production in Alabama. Today, we learned that Mercedes-Benz is investing $4 billion in the state, with more than $7 billion planned across U.S. operations. Wow. So Canada's losing jobs to the deep south of America. The same deep south, by the way, that snooty Canadian elites love to look down on. And Canada's response is apparently to sell out to the communist Chinese. They're opening their automobile market to Chinese EVs at preferential rates. What could go wrong? Canada has gone from declaring China as their biggest security threat to this.
I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
New world order. It's the worst. So this is kind of Carney's way of sticking his finger in Trump's eye.
Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, it's over.
This is suicidal. Now imagine thinking that your economic lifeline would come from a communist regime. At what price, Mark? But Canada also has a literal death wish. They're killing off their undesirables. Of course, they're not alone in the euthanasia market. Spain should be ashamed of itself as well. These are not policies, by the way, of a hopeful, culturally vibrant, spiritually intact society. Of course, if you disagree with any of this, you think it's demonic, you better watch your step, though, because you might find yourself at odds with the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Remember how Pretty Boy Trudeau treated the Canadian truckers? They were punished for their activism until the court stepped in and reversed Trudeau's harsh move as illegal. And while we all laugh at the silly land acknowledgements in the United States, you know, standing on stolen land kind of thing, in Canada, it's become so important to them that they're even talking like the King of England did, well, when he was speaking to Parliament.
I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and the Anishinaabe people. This land acknowledgement is a recognition of shared history as a nation.
But those land acknowledgements aren't just virtue signaling. It could turn into land seizures. Canada is signing an agreement with a Musqueam Indian band recognizing their territorial rights, while one law professor is telling the CBC News that this doesn't involve the transfer of private property. People in Canada are on edge big time that eventually it's going to come to that. I wouldn't doubt it for a second. Conservative leader John Rusted shared this letter on X that was reportedly sent from the mayor to the homeowners in Richmond, British Columbia. It says that your property is located within the claim area. The court has declared Aboriginal title to your property, which may compromise the status and validity of your ownership. Yeah. Think about that next time you hear Democrats doing their own land acknowledgement. And on the immigration front, their problem is even worse than ours. Populations are rising faster than housing supply. Costs are going up. Systems are under strain. Now a major province is considering separation. That's how well things are going up north. But heck, at least their progressives have their priorities straight. What happens, by the way, when an actual woman cuts in line ahead of a fake trans woman at one of their conferences? Well, they throw down their gender equity cards.
I was standing here with my gender equity card before you called on the previous speaker. That's my point of privilege. This card was used in an inappropriate manner. And while I understand in Ontario, we know this is equity, even if that, this was also used inappropriately in terms of gender. These cards for individuals like myself who identify as a Black woman have no value outside of this space.
I'm dropping my gender equity card and raising you to woke. Great. But you could actually imagine that happening, right? In Mamdani's New York or Karen Bass's LA. After all, they're much closer to Toronto than Trump. And the results? Look at this headline from today. New York City job growth stalls as migrant influx continues. Or how about this one? LA County leads nation in population loss as California growth continues to stall. Yikes. But still, red state America, it's going in the right direction. Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, Florida, South Dakota all have expanding industries and are all attracting new residents and new investment. Again, thanks to President Trump's trade deals, investment is soaring in places where investment is welcome. So, look, while we conservatives, we don't have everything we want, we've accomplished a lot. We stopped the trans invasion into girls' sports, which a few years ago seemed impossible. Abortion is no longer a constitutional right. Roe was overturned after 50 years. That's thanks to President Trump's court fix. So in sum, enough of the pessimism. I can't take it anymore. If you love freedom, if you love opportunity, the American way is the only way forward. So pray for victory in Iran, pray for our military, pray for peace and healing everywhere.
Yeah. So a lot of people are leaving and heading south to the U.S. Can't blame them. They're packing up shop and they're heading stateside. Yeah, pay Apotex. Over 40 years, Honey and Barry were committed philanthropists. So that was December 13th, 2017, that this happened. And I don't know, we still got a tip line up there for anybody knows anything. Yeah, it's the Honey and Barry Sherman Foundation, Legacy Foundation. Their daughter is operating it. Yeah, it was a hit. They were put in some position. They never compromised position. They never ever detailed that. The details were very, very slim. So sketchy. You didn't know what really happened. It was covered up real fast too. So it is so corrupt. Now you see, we got the highest rate of insolvencies since 2009. Just looking at 385 a day. People are going bankrupt. 385 people a day are going bankrupt in this country. It's just disgusting. And it just all seems to be part of the plan. There's I'm trying to find it here that I don't have it on the bookmarks. Canada, there's 7 countries. Maybe I can find it here if I go back. I gotta get out of this. Go here. Iran just got selected to See if I can find the actual article here. They're for the UN, and it's for, here it is. Canada, France, Spain, Norway, the Netherlands, Australia, UK, Finland, Switzerland, Austria have nominated Iran to a UN committee which makes policy on women's rights, disarmament, and terrorism prevention. Can you believe that? Yeah, it's a joke, all right, what's going on, but it's an upside down world. It's like Idiocracy. If you ever watched that movie, if you haven't, watch it. So here's what's here now. We'll see. Here's Iran's human rights. I'm gonna mute this because I don't know what they put on it for music. The occupying Islamic Republic regime has handcuffed and blindfolded children aged 8 to 12 solely for peacefully protesting in schools. The international community must recognize the criminal nature of this regime and its treatment of the Iranian people who are effectively held hostage. This world sucks right now. I don't know what it is. Now that isn't disturbing. I don't know what is. And now they're in the UN looking out for the human rights of women, and yeah. UN we should have been out of that years ago. I've said that. Anybody who's following this channel for when I first started, I was saying we shouldn't be in the UN. We shouldn't be in definitely not WEF, WHO, none of that. But we're signed into all that. We're on that new WHO agenda that was signed on right away. As soon as they got it, we're one of the first countries in there, right? Get those pokes into everybody, get our share of them. So, anyways. What we need is some people tough enough to stand up, right? Won't back down. Won't get offended.
It'll probably be the relay, son. What do you call him, son? What are your gals, son?
Gals? Come on, old timer. We're dykes on bikes.
Oh, shit. Okay, well.
So, you think that's the issue with relay?
It's a good early check. That'll be the relay. Thanks, Pops. You're welcome, Dykes.
We need more Clint Eastwoods around, don't we? So, some of you probably seen I did a couple of videos there this past week, well today for one, but just so people don't forget about the Trudeau years leading up to where we're stuck in now, with the Carney years, I say that plural, and anyways, it's probably going to be 4 parts because I want to, the next one is on the unmarked, supposedly resting places of dirt, I guess, and into where the carnage come in, where he was parachuted in, all that stuff. So it might take 2 videos to do that and there's just so much after that, but there's a lot of channels that are just pushing this. They know we're watching this daily, hourly, and they're great. I'm just doing a down memory lane thing, right? So that you watch that video. Like I said, we can't forget how it got here with Singh and Trudeau scratching each other's backs, and you know, that's why we're in the position we're in. And I don't want to go too deep into it because just so much, how the leadership convention was so rigged for Carney that, you know, it was a couple 100,000 votes, wasn't it, that weren't counted? You know, and how Freeland bails out, and what's his name? Crooked cop there from Ontario, Toronto, bails out. Marco Mendocino. I got a picture. You might be a little bit surprised. I'm gonna do some headshots of all the people that resigned. So a lot of them for good reasons. Other ones is to hide. So I'm missing one. I just thought of one. I'm missing Catherine McKenna. Where's the $80 billion, Catherine? You say it loud enough and long enough, people will actually believe you. Yeah. Those are communist words. I don't know if she's too stupid to realize it or just throwing it in our faces. That's a lot of money. It's disappeared. Nothing done. Nothing said. No. Probably everybody got a piece of it, so they're all happy. Okay, folks. I guess that's it. Thanks for joining in. It's always great to see you all on here. And we'll back at her next week, but I'm going to try to get these other videos together. Takes a bit of time to research and get it all up. But anyways, hopefully I can get a couple out this week. How many made in Ottawa billionaires? Right. JT James spoke up against the CV response from the government here, and they came after his medical license. Well, okay. Once again, thank you very much. We'll do it next week. Bye for all, and God bless. Keep your chin up.